Right. Did you choose where to be born in this world? Did you choose your name? Did you choose anything about your condition in this world? Have this discussion. Have a discussion. Have a deep discussion about these things, and then you can bring some ayat from the Quran, just to read yourself so that you're familiar with that discussion. You can have that discussion based on some evidences. Okay? And then in Surah Al-Naml, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the English rendition being, and they rejected them with their inner selves. They went against their fitrah. They rejected themselves with their inner selves. They convinced themselves thereof, and they created in injustice and haughtiness, so that this is the end of the corrupters. Basically what they did was they knew that their fitrah told them there's a God, there's a creator, there's an uncreated creator, but they decided otherwise. Let's just do something different. You see? So this is the first bit. I want you to focus on faith and where it came from and what it means in the real worlds. In the real worlds. Number one, the worst form of faith is what Pascal said. It's called Pascal's wager. Pascal said, if I'm a betting man, I have to bet that God exists. Because if I lose the bet, what happens? If I lose the bet that there's a God, what happens? She's right. Damnation, man. So I bet that there's a God. This is the worst form of faith, right? The one is the other, you accept, you have faith in an ultimate being. But that's just one element, okay? So that's number one, yeah? Number two is the conscious soul. The conscious soul, yeah. So we know that we are made of ruh, the badan, the body. We know that. And we can analyze that, we can scientifically prove it exists, we can look at it, we can touch it, we can feel it, we can play with it, we can hit it, wake ourselves up, have some coffee, and through our senses we know the body exists. It's scientifically provable. Then we have the nafs and the ruh, the self that gives us the identity. And every single human being is born in a state of uniqueness. So your nafs is it may be similar, but it's not the same as mine. But then the ruh. What is the ruh? Explain to me what the ruh is. What is ruh? What does it mean? What do you think it means? Soul. What is a soul? Sorry? Is it not that spark of life that gives the body an existence? What is it? You need to understand, you need to think deeply about this. Because if you get this, you relate to the other people very well. You'll be able to have a conversation with them without mentioning ayat from the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because as soon as you do that, right, you've lost the conversation, it's gone. Oh yes, and their mind is ticking over, oh yes, Bin Laden, 7/11, 9/11, 7/7, Al-Qaeda, oh yes. Honor killings. Let me get away from this man. Let's leave this conversation on the side. Do you see what I'm saying? This is why I want you to start thinking logically, rationally, and think about them as a human being that you love. You have to manifest love. You have to project your love. Now, where did love come from? Where did love come from? You know, we talked about faith, didn't we? Where did love come from? Where does it come from? Can you touch love? Can you feel love? Yeah, but you're conscious of it. You fall in love with people, sister, very quickly, and so do I. Yeah? And so do you, brother, yeah? You see a beautiful sister and you fall in love. Let's be honest. Yeah? We need to be honest with each other. You see, does anyone like Mohamed Salah, the football player? Do you love him? You don't love him? Oh, it's because of Liverpool, right? You're into this, like this baggage, yeah? Liverpool, Man United, and they all hate each other, they fight. No, but you love him when he prostrates to Allah. When he scores the goal, he prostrates to Allah, and humanity starts to love him because he's doing his fitrah in public. He's demonstrating his fitrah in public, and that's from his soul. His love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is manifested in what he does, and a million people, they say, Allahu Akbar. And another million people say, wow, I want to do that too. Seriously, a lot of people are embracing Islam because of Mohammed Salah. You see what I'm saying? The conscious soul. The conscious soul manifesting what it believes in love with Allah. So if you're in love with Allah, you're cognizant of the fact that Allah's one of the names of Allah is Al-Wadud. The all-loving, the all-encompassing, the lover, the ultimate lover of creatures, the ultimate lover that gave us an opportunity to have hayata, the hayata dunya, and ultimately that will send us either there or there, depending on decisions and things that we do in this world. The conscious soul. Are you getting me now? Talk about the conscious soul. Talk about the body. Does the body survive without food? Can you survive? How many days can you survive without food? Well, right now, Malaysia's full of makan. Makan. There's a beautiful restaurant in Portobello Road called Makan. You been there, brother? Brother with the phone? Assalamu alaikum. You been there? Makan. Makan. If you don't have makan, you cannot. You cannot live. Days, weeks, maybe. Khalas, what happens to the body? It perishes. Unless the ruh is fully cognizant of the fact that there is a creator, there is no point in living for that ruh. And the body demises as well. So what do you need for the ruh? The ruh, it needs what? Food. If you don't have food for the ruh, for the self or the ruh, what happens? Nowadays, most of the people are eating plenty of food, and you can see it. You can see, look, I can show you. Yeah? The button is full. The stomach is full. And the soul is empty. We fill our souls. No. We fill our button, we fill our stomach, and at the expense of the soul. And you see a lot of people walking around in where I'm from Leicester. You know Leicester, they scored 9 goals against Southampton last night, man. And I wasn't there. It wasn't anything to do with me, and they don't have Mo Salah, so I don't know how they did it. But anyway, they scored 9. But in the city of Leicester, he's not all champions. You know, they said the city of champions when we won the, that league thing, you know, Premiership, a few years ago, he won. And not we, nahnu, them, they won. I didn't win. But anyway, in the city, a lot of people are walking around. I remember Abdurrahim said years ago in a talk, Abdurrahim Green, does anyone know him? Yeah? He said that when he came back to London, he said it was the city of the living dead. The city of the living dead. Because the conscious soul has been demoted and the badan is being elevated. Everything that the body desires, the self, directs the body to eat, to sleep, to have relations, to drink, to listen, to take music on board and live for music. You know, I used to live for music. I used to live for music. Not one moment of the day used to go by when I did not have my Walkman. You remember back in the days, I mean, talking like I'm old. I'm ancient. The Romans were ancient. I'm worse than that, right? 50 plus. I'm not, I'm kebab. I'm not shabab. I'm kebab. I'm fried. So we used to listen to the Walkman, right? You remember the Walkman? No, yeah, you put them now in the museum and everyone laughs. And then, subhanallah, the music, I used to listen to Shostakovich, you know these names, Beethoven, I don't recommend it. I mean, I don't just, but I'm just telling you, I had to have the music on to fill the void because the soul had not been fed. Music is an excellent way to feed the soul, guys. In the absence of other things. In the absence, people say, oh, is it halal? Is it haram? I say, bro, I answered this once. I got in serious trouble from the ulama. Right? And the guys were there on the stage with me. Yusuf, what you answer like this for? Arab brothers. Yeah, Sheikh. Take him away from the stage, yeah? Because I lived it. I had to tell the others that if you're going to live it, this is what's going to happen. So I was praying. Allahu Akbar. God is great. Allahu Akbar. Suddenly, Beethoven. It's not working. The salah isn't working. Go, make wudu again. This actually happened, right? I'm telling you this happened. There's me struggling to understand the faith and get connected with Allah, and this music is still in my soul. Now, years and years I've been listening to it. I've been playing it, been going to concerts. I used to play the cello badly. Thank God it was bad, because otherwise I'd probably be still playing it now. Crazy. It's like the vibration of the stringed instruments. It goes into the body, into the soul, into the heart, and it stays with you for days and days and days. Even nasheeds. I was in Sydney at an event. Some of the brothers I know very well, I love them for the sake of Allah. Bilal, what's his name? Muslim Bilal, and another one, Omar Isa, and they were coming, they were singing these duets, and 2 days later, it was still going through my head. I said, rather, I do not need that. It might be good for some people, yeah? I'm not going to be judgmental. No, but what happened to me in the salah was really, 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 it was a message from God. Direct. You want your soul? You want it back? Get rid of the music. So what happened? I made the wudu. I went back, Allahu Akbar. I stopped the prayer. I went back. I made wudu. 4 or 5 times. I'm not joking. 4 or 5 times. Then I was a very young, innocent Muslim. My fitrah was clean. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and me, we were a little bit connected. So I felt it. Now, I stopped feeling it. I'm listening to music every day from the shopping malls. When I open my phone, there's music. Over the round it, this guy's got music and that one's got everything. The shopping mall, every single place you go to, music going on, right? Am I right? Is there a place you can go where there's not music? Even when you're in the masjid, the person's phone comes back. You know what I did? Something told me here. He said, if I want my soul back, I grabbed all of my music. I threw it out the door. Literally, I threw it in a box, threw it out the door and said, you guys take it. I don't need it. I shouldn't have done that either. It's like you're going to, alcohol, you throw it out of your house. It's not going to be good for people, right? So anyway, Allahu Akbar. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. No music. Gone. The conscious soul returned. Engaged. Do you see what I'm saying? So, the metaphysical is more powerful than the badan. The ruh, tons of studies from scientists, psychologists. Psychological impact is much bigger than physical impact. If I punch you here, it's not going to be very much compared to what I can say with my tongue from my heart, my expressions of my conscious soul. I love you for the sake of Allah. You will now feel this, not you, brother. You see what I mean? But you feel that the soul comes alive when we express love for each other because we know the ultimate lover, the lover of all lovers, Al-Wadud. Am I right? When you feel the sweetness of faith, your conscious soul has just come alive. You see? So talk to them about the love and manifest it to them in your conversations. Believe me, the faith and the conscious soul, 2 of the most powerful ways to reconnect the person with their conscious soul through manifesting love in your conversation. I mean, brother, don't do this with your sisters. Do you see what I mean? Put your guard up a little bit and get another sister to say, because the next bit is awkward. When she takes shahada and she starts crying. Am I right? And they fall in love with the person who taught them. And you're already married, right? You've already got love. You say, well, you can have more, but you don't need it right now. Conscious soul. When a person wants to do something and they're physically unable, hundreds of stories you've heard, right? But they're determined they're going to do it. They achieve it. They defy logic. They defy physical constraints. And they do it. Am I right? Mention a couple of examples where you've seen something like that happening. Is that explainable from a scientific point of view, to look at the body and say, how did that happen? No. It's not, is it? Yeah? Okay, we move on. We can talk for ages. I can give a lecture about that for 2 hours. About that type, that thing. One thing I do want to talk to you about, though, is when a soul is conscious of the Creator. Scientist and Lisa Miller, professor of clinical psychology at Columbia University, she said the thickening of the brain's cortex is associated with spiritual and religious activity. So it's just one study, but there's many studies you can read, okay? So she said that when the soul manifests that religious activity and they pray, they make dhikr, they read the Quran, they do this. It could be a Christian who's in obedience to Allah, could be a Hindu who has found Allah, could be a Buddhist who's found Allah, the God, the Creator, the uncreated creation, yeah? Then the brain gets stronger. You see? What else happens when the soul is in obedience to their Lord? Just a few things. Support networks occur. It's no mistake, because you're doing amalu salihah. You're doing righteous actions. So you start to visit the sick. So the sick get visited when the soul is conscious. You attend the funerals of the dying. Even if they're not yet Muslim. They are not yet Muslim. They are my brother or sister living next door to me. And you know, our neighbors, the scholars of Islam, they define the neighbor as 40 this way. Arba'in. And 40 this way and there, front and back. So the visiting of the sick occurs. The visiting of those who are now bereaved and they have gone back to Allah, it occurs. The masajids are full. Women are there. Children are there. Men are there at the front, adoring their Lord, their conscious souls. The neighbors are happy. The children and parental function is now in order because they've connected and they're conscious of why they're here. And they're continually refreshing that consciousness because they have to. That's why we pray 5 times a day, right? Think about it. Could have been 50, right? It was 5. We need to constantly be feeding the soul. So we pray. We make dhikr. We go, and part of your amalu salihah is to the rights upon your parents. The rights upon your children's right upon you, your neighbor, the neighbor's right. All of this is part of amalu salihat, is all parts of acts of worship that strengthen your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you taste the sweetness of faith. So, the third point is we are all upon a shared journey. You see, remember, I'm talking to anyone. Yeah? You agree? We're on the same journey. First of all, we were thrust upon the big white body jet. Usually on a jet, you go to the airport, right? You buy the ticket before you go there online. You get your e-ticket. You show your e-ticket, the passport. You get on the plane, and you're conscious and you're cognizant of the fact you're getting on the plane for what? For what? For what? Why are you going on the plane? To reach the destination. Clear? On this plane, you didn't choose it. Something chose it for you. Am I right? A conscious will, a powerful conscious will, decided you were going to get on that plane, and you're there sitting with all these other passengers that are on the plane with you in a wide-body jet, and you can see as far as the eye can see on both sides, in front of you and in the back, An infinite number of people in front and back, and you can read about them, you can know about them, you can talk to them. Is it not crazy that you do not talk to them? Is it crazy? And the first thing we do when we get on the plane is guy's got his hand on the, what's wrong with you, man? Oh, there's not enough space in this plane. Am I right? The last thing on our minds is the conscious soul, reuniting the soul with the Creator. And we're on this plane, and none of us know when we're going to get off the plane. This is what life is. I'm not talking about the one where you buy the ticket, because you've got a pretty good idea. You can see in front of you, you know, you've got the screen in front of you. Yeah, you click here, and it says, there we are on the journey. We're about halfway, another 3 hours. In my case, if it's London, it's going to be a lot longer than that. On this journey, no one knows how they got here in the plane, right? We do. I do, because I've studied it. And no one knows when the journey will come to ultimately to an end. We're on a shared journey. If I told you, tomorrow morning, my brother, bring your Levi t-shirt, we're going on a journey. See you there, 8 o'clock, Avenue K. Not Special K, Avenue K. I want to see you there 8 o'clock. What's the first thing you're going to ask me? How good is the coffee there? Is it good? Starbucks, terrible. Absolutely. Why does anyone take that place? Cut this on the camera, yeah? Why does anyone drink Starbucks coffee? I mean, this is bad enough, but that Starbucks, oh my God. Subhanallah. Have you taken leave of your senses? You're certainly not a conscious soul until you had a good coffee, right? I'm opening a coffee shop, so I've done all the research. It's the worst coffee. Robusta, it's like £5 a kilo. It's junk. I'm going to get done over. I'm going to get sued by the owners of Starbucks now. He never pays any taxes anyway in my country. But anyway, so going back to the journey. If I said to you, 8 o'clock, tomorrow, blah, 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 8 o'clock, what would you say? Come on, some different people answer. What would you say? Come on, it's simple stuff, man. It's not rocket science. Yes, brother. Where are you going? Where are you going, man? Yeah, where are you going, man? Yeah. Calm down, man. Don't worry about it. Just go with the flow, man. We're just going on a journey, innit? Like, you know, G's going on a journey, bro. No problem. Mafi mushkil, man. Why do you want to ask questions like that? You know, this is what used to happen to me back in the days. I used to ask, what's this world about, guys? People used to come to me and say, oh, hi, in the street. I say, why are you saying hi? Do I know you? Hi, I saw you the other day. Hi. What does hi mean? There's another point I'm going to talk about later on. Semantic indications, yeah? Semantic indications. Of course, you're going to ask, where are you going? So if you're on a journey with 1 billion other people, how many people are living in Malaysia? Not 1 billion. Yeah? 15 million. 25. 30, any increases? Going. To the man with a Levi t-shirt. You see what I mean? So obviously, you're going to ask me the question, and I'm going to try and explain it to you. We are going on a journey, and I want to achieve this from the journey. It will take this much time. It will cost you this much money. I will give you all the information. And then, apparently, human beings don't have any of that. Come in. You want to come in? Oh, okay, fine. So apparently human beings don't have any of that today. Now in my country, in Britain, now children go to school. When we were kids, we used to go to school like them, and we used to have an assembly. Do you have assemblies here? Yeah, you know what they are? Assembly, and what happens in the assembly? Yeah? Sing. You sing about what? But like Malaysian things and cultural things and whatever it is, yeah. So we used to have an assembly and they talk about the prophets. Every single morning. Compulsory. Every single school, every single morning, we used to talk about God. Not long ago. Why? I'm telling you this because I want you to imagine yourself in Malaysia in the future. You don't know. Hopefully, it won't be like this. And inshallah, it won't be like this. Because God's conscious people everywhere. Alhamdulillah. We have our Christian brothers who are very conscious of God. We have many, many Buddhists that have a spiritual path. Now, you cannot do that unless it is a religious school. Now, if you go to Eton, yeah, you go to Eton, then it's compulsory to go to chapel. Yeah, so, you know, if anyone says to you that you Muslims, you make people pray and you force them to the religion and stuff, then you can say, well, what about Eton? Yes, that's a right mess. Eton's mess, yeah, sorry. Yeah? Do you see what I'm saying? Every soul is on this journey. They've got the conscious soul. I've explained about love, and now you're on this journey. And every single human being shares the same operating system. Have you noticed? They're unique, but they share the same operating system. And if you ask them about A, B, C, D, they will give 99.9% of them, and there is a certain percentage of people now who are thinking over or underthinking the situation in this life, right? And taking it for jest and play, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains in the Quran, that we haven't created this world for mere play and amusement. In many places in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions it. So guys, so have the conversation because you're on the journey. Have the conversation because you're on the journey. You've got the same operating system. You're definitely using the same vehicle. All of you came on the journey without being, asked. So you're sold into slavery. You're sold into slavery. You didn't choose, because that's the definition of slavery. So you're a slave of something. You're a slave of something. Yes, your mother, you can be a slave to your mother. Yes, your boss, most definitely. You will end up being his slave. But no, not definitively, not definitely, not absolutely. It will only be the fact that you either have in this world hundreds of masters, or you have one. The ultimate slave, the ultimate creator, isn't it? So you have to have that journey and have those conversations. And then Ibrahim alayhi salam in the Quran, what does he do? And it's very similar to what happened to me, by the way, okay? Because I used to love astronomy. You know the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam? So he says, so, and the ayat from the Quran, so, when the night covered with darkness, he saw the star. And he said, verily, this is my Lord. You see? But then it set, and he said, I like not those that disappear. Verily, this can't be the Lord, right? So he's looking at the star, he's looking at the night sky. And I used to do the same thing. I used to look at the night sky, and I used to see the distances between the stars. I used to read about it, and I used to look at the stars and gaze into the infinite, universe is, and our human eye is capable of seeing some incredible distances if you think about it. And then the next thing is he says, I saw the moon rising, and he said, this is my Lord. And then the moon set. He said, my Lord cannot be one who sets. It's not my Lord, right? And then he says, you saw the sun rising. And he said, this is my Lord. And then, this is greater, because it's greater than the moon. The sun appears to be very powerful. It's, it has extreme rays and has heat, and it sustains life. This is my Lord, okay? But when it set, he said, oh my people, indeed, I am free from what you associate with Allah. Indeed, I have turned my face towards He who created the heavens and earth, inclining towards truth. I'm not one of those who associate with others with Allah. So this is ultimately the dialogue that we all need to be having when you're talking to a person who is not yet Muslim, who is, and many born Muslims are in that category. Am I right? Yeah? Many born Muslims, but are not actually Muslims, because a Muslim is the one that submits to the ultimate creator in everything they do, in everything they say, in everything they think, as much as they can. Point number 3. Is that point 3 or is that 4? Yeah, that's point 1, 2, 3. I've got the numbers wrong. That's right. Number 4. Yeah, so number 4, point number 4 is about complex design. Stop. Complex design. Macro and micro. Macro and micro. Of course, it speaks of a designer, doesn't it? Okay? The planets, the sun that sustains us. Incidentally, the sun is a middle-aged star, okay? It has an age, has a start point. It's a middle-aged star. This is scientists declare this, and it will have an end point, okay? So what happens when the sun has an end point? Halas. Mushkil. If we're alive, it's going to be a problem, right? Yeah? So the atmosphere, the ecosystems, yeah? The life systems around us, the billions and billions, literally you cannot possibly count the number of living things, and of course they're all unique. Am I right? The fine-tuning of the universe. If you think about the ozone layer, if the ozone layer was to reduce slightly, what would happen? The rays from the sun, they get in. They're too strong, yeah? Too many. It stops bouncing off the earth, the ozone, the protected layer for the earth, and everything fails. Everything fails, okay? If the moon and the sun are closer together, or the earth is slightly closer together, what happens? Catastrophe, right? If the gravitational effects in the earth are decreased or increased, what happens? We will start floating, or we get stuck to the floor. Am I right? Everything has been done in due course, with balance, with mizan. It is perfect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that in a verse, that if I was to bring all of creation together, and they try to create something, they could not create a fly. Yeah? And if they created the fly, if they managed, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning the scenario, and the fly was to take something from them, they would not be able to retrieve it. So I think if you imagine what's the name of that mosquito, yeah? Annoying little thing. that Allah has created to, give us some tests. The fly is a very small thing. It's you can, within a millisecond, you can kill it easily. Yeah? And it comes to you and it goes on your neck and it goes tick. Uh-oh. And before you know it, it's gone. And it's left you in a diseased state. Do you see what I'm saying? You couldn't even create a mosquito. You can't create matter is neither destroyed or created. According to scientists, you can never change. You can change the nature of matter, but you can't create it and you cannot destroy it. This is the universe. Complex in nature, macro and micro. If you start zooming in with an electron microscope, you see a whole ecosystem of cells and neutrons, and you know the score. If you look and zoom into the universe, you see an infinite number of bodies, and it's impossible for you to enumerate them. And mankind today only knows of 3 to 5% of the known universe. I'm not talking about the other universes that they've discovered, right? Yeah? That they've seen as dots on a map, on an astrological map. Okay, so the creator of that has a will, the creator of that designed it, the creator of that put us here, the creator of that gave us a purpose. If it isn't that if we got no purpose, that's just very foolish, right? So therefore, by deduction, by reasoning, by logic, we have a purpose. Okay, guys? Am I right? Very simple stuff. We have the same origin. Another point. We appear to have the same hardwiring, like I've mentioned. Despite all of our differences and diversity, we accept what is good and evil universally. From the Quran, we made you into different nations and tribes that you would ta'arafu, that you would understand each other, you would know each other. So that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us all the same, with no diversity, yeah? Be very bored of each other after some time, wouldn't we? Yeah? And we wouldn't get to know each other, and then we would, honestly, if we were all blonde-haired, blue-eyed, suddenly we'd be very bored of each other. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I created you in different nations and tribes that you would know one another. Most of mankind throughout the ages, another point, in civilizations has sought gods. Because if you go and you travel in the world, what will you find? What are all civilizations surrounded? What are they next to? Temples, churches, mosques, chapels, etc. If you go to England, my country, you visit through the countryside, every single civilization is based with a spire. The church, and then the school. The two places, isn't it? Same, so everywhere. So obviously, mankind has actually sought out God in every single civilization, in every single age, and it's only in this age that they've started to believe that scientists somehow can imagine that they can create or they can destroy. But they cannot. You see? They try to replace the divine with that which can't even imagine a star, which is, what's the nearest star? Yeah, how many light years away? What's a light year? 4 light years, yeah? 4 light years, that's light traveling at the speed of light. For 4 continuous years, you'll never reach it. And the scientists can't reach that, can they? They can't fathom it. But somehow, they've decided that God doesn't exist. You understand me? So, we have to know that every single one of us has a need to define ourselves in terms of our ruh, in terms of our, our spiritual. And another point, children. Children, all of them start with the fitrah. We mentioned this. We mentioned the hadith already. With the absence of instruction or interference from adults, what happens to them? It's quite interesting. So, Professor J.L. Barrett in Oxford University, he said, children know, they know humans are not behind the order, so the idea of creating God makes sense to them. Children just need adults to specify which one. That sounds like the hadith, right? This is what scientists are saying about the issue. You are born in a state of fitrah, and then your parents, they lead you to do this or that, right? Maybe worship Allah. That's the best, okay? So a child is sinless and unable to create corruption without external interaction. So what he did, he put kids in a room for 6 months and he analyzed them. And he left them alone to decipher, and he came with the conclusion that they understand what purpose is, and they all would start. He said they would definitely, if they were left on their own in a desert island, eventually they would all of them start worshipping a god. Yeah? So it's fitrah. It's normal, it's natural. To believe is absolute, it's very abhorrent, it's very wrong for you to say that now in my country, there's no religious instruction in the state at all. They've completely compartmentalized. They say that if you want to leave unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and what is God's. The church. You see what I mean? So now there's that, but it's happening to Muslims as well. Yeah? It can't be right, because if the instruction manual came and told us, look, this is how to live your life, this is how to have success, and you do something different, what's going to happen to you? And you're in denial of that book. Okay? You're in denial of that book, aren't you? So you become like a hypocrite in your actions. So therefore, and another point, okay, a very, very important point. Okay, so moving on from, how children are born in a state of natural disposition. The next one is something, of course, can't come from nothing. I've kind of covered this. I've covered that one. But I want to talk to you about the quantum vacuum, because what they do is they throw at you. Now, scientists use a lot of psychobabble. They use psychobabble to psych you out and make you think they're very clever, and they've actually come out with a solution which you didn't know about. So, right. Maybe there is another way. But there's not. Because they mention the quantum vacuum as being this real entity in the world, which is what? Nothing. How can you have nothing in the middle of, it's even quite confusing to talk about. How can you have something that is actually nothing in the middle of something? Hold on a minute, my friend. You know that it doesn't exist. It has been created in a lab to demonstrate that somehow objects start to randomly occur in a quantum way, in a vacuum, right? Because this is what they're going to say to you. No, you're wrong. Because you're going to say, look, something doesn't come out of nothing. Which, in the created world, it can't be destroyed and created. We've mentioned that matter. It changes its form. And nothing nothing ever creates itself. Am I right? Yeah? Unless you've seen it or you've witnessed it, or you can bring some evidence for it. It was never going to happen in a billion years, in a million months of Sundays, right? So, therefore, what they say is that we have devised this thing called the quantum vacuum in the lab. It's not real, okay? And we witnessed, now there's a whole issue about the person who witnesses something then has an impact on what he's witnessing as well, okay? And they're very dishonest about that bit, yeah? So it doesn't exist, they've never existed, it's a theoretical construct, and you cannot possibly, accept that as a reason for something creating something out of nothing. Do you understand me? Okay? So ultimately, we're back to square one, aren't we? And which is the Creator. Yeah? Don't let an atheist monologue, it's an atheist monologue, because he sits there, they're pretty clever guys. I mean, yeah, I've got to give, Lawrence Krauss and, and these guys. Yes, and a priori, I would say that, something can create itself, and 0 + 1 = 5 is equivalent to the universe. So, therefore it is. And then by that time you've said, wow, this guy knows something I don't. But then when you actually read into it, you spend time thinking about it, you're on the wide-body jet and this guy's just told you this. Yeah? So you've got to respond to him. You can't create that. You can't create, nothing creates itself. Nothing, okay? Do you understand? Is that point very clear? Now the point is, all of this, so either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, or were they created from nothing, or were they the creators of themselves? Or did the universe create, or did they create the heavens and earth? Rather, they are not certain. Or have they depositories containing the provision of your Lord, or are they controllers of themselves? Or have they a stairway to the heavens upon which they listen? Then let the listeners produce a clear authority. Now, the universe had a beginning. Am I right? Now, according to scientists, according to most of the learned people alive today, even Lawrence Krauss, he accepts that the universe had a definitive beginning, and we call this the Big Bang thing. But with the Big Bang, of course, there's a spark of inspiration, which, of course, can't come out of nothing because the quantum vacuum doesn't exist. Am I getting I'm making myself clear? Okay? So the Quran has already leveled all of these arguments, and from there, that's how we can, and if you study these deeply and you make tadabbur upon these verses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will find they are totally logical and totally clear. A plus B equals C, and so on and forth. So on and so forth, okay? All right? And it goes on. The Quran, there's so many arguments against this because, of course, that's what the atheists at the time or the Quraysh at the time were trying to justify why they were doing all of this stuff. So they were trying to bring out arguments, and the Quran was answering all of them straight away, okay? We're unique, which is really incredible. So every leaf, every created thing has its what? Its own unique DNA. Recently, we've only discovered this. Of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning it in the Quran to everyone, around in 1400 years ago. But every single species, animal, plant, mineral, substance, planet, star, blah, 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 and the list goes on, you can't even imagine it, has its own unique structure, DNA structure. Okay? And Allah says, does man think that we cannot assemble his bones? Nay, we're able to put together in perfect order it today, the very tips of his finger, and we know about this ayah, many people know about this. Of course, this is, the fingertip is, of course, something that even today, you go to Malaysia today, isn't it? And you put your 2 fingers there, yeah? So you put your 2 fingers there to give what? Your identity, isn't it? your ID. So all of these things that indicate we are totally and utterly unique, even to our very fingertips, and we'll be resurrected and we'll be put back into the same state that we were when we were born. Okay? And science confirms this. Again, David Miller from Adelaide University, he says that in the question, does every animal, or does everything have a unique DNA the same way the human beings do? And he said yes. He said that every single human, and I'm just mentioning this so that there's some sort of corroboratory evidence from scientists, because they all say, oh, no, there's another scientist that said this. But that most 99% of scientists will say that everything has its own unique DNA. Everything dies. Everything dies, right? Everything has a beginning point, and everything dies in this planet. Everything dies. Every human, every animal, every plant, the sun, like I said, is a middle-aged star, and it's going to die. Okay? Now, doesn't this indicate that we have purpose? It's just like a journey, isn't it? So you can, again, this is another way, linking from the wide-body jet, you can start talking about purpose. Purpose definitely makes sense. Children make sense of the world from purpose. They know that there's a God. They would worship a God. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in the English rendition, I've created death as well as life, so that you may be tested. Which of you is best in conduct? And He alone is almighty and truly forgiving. Al-Ghafur Rahim. He's very, very merciful. So everything has a purpose. The tree has a purpose. If you think about the number of purposes the tree has, right? Therefore, everything has a purpose. Therefore, a human has a purpose. Therefore, the purpose is unique to the humans, okay? And it's defined in the Quran, as you know, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ جِنَّ وَإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. That you were not created for any other purpose but to know God, to accept God, to be close to God, jinn and mankind, spirits and human beings. Okay? Everything dies. Right? Does it make sense? So, now if life went on continually, there actually wouldn't be a purpose, would there? Do you see what I'm saying? If life went on infinitely, there wouldn't really be a purpose. Think about it. Think about it deeply. You know the verses of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says many places, make deep reflection upon the verses. The Quran isn't just something that you memorize and you put it on the shelf and you read it every Friday. It's something that you implement in your life. It's the #1 philosophical book in the world today. It's not been changed. It cannot be recreated. It cannot be, and in the Arabic language, it cannot be matched for its significance, for its poetry, for its meaning, for everything. Okay? So this is the book, without doubt, that we need to link ourselves with. And we were not created for play and amusement. We were created for a specific purpose. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy for us to come upon that purpose, to create, as a community of human beings living in this multicultural land of Malaysia, that we can call upon ourselves, our family members, our neighbors, and a wider community to live according to that. Ameen. Now, the last point was the semantic indications. So, you know, in England, where I'm from, you know, you probably say it as well here, we say hi. Yeah, remember I said hi, I couldn't understand it? And then I learned why I couldn't understand it and why I was confused, because it conflicted with my fitra. Now, the term that we used to use, the goodbye, particularly the goodbye bit. Goodbye comes from the term God be with you. Okay? So God be with you is the original, then it becomes goodbye. Then after a bit, it comes bye, then it goes yo, and then it's yo, touch, bruv. Yo, let's do the, high fives, high 10. So then a person semantically, they leave the remembrance of God, right? Apart from, and then in the Spanish language, in the Latin, in the Spanish is exactly the adios means to God, means go to God, connect with God, religion, yeah? So all of our semantic, in our language, OMG, atheist, OMG. I thought you said you're an atheist. No, OMG, bruv. What does it mean? You're trying to belittle the one that created you? OMG? OMG? Innit, bruv? No, really? Adios. God be with you. Goodbye becomes goodbye, becomes bye, becomes yo, becomes touch, bruv. Am I right? How do we salute each other today? In terms of the one that created, or in terms of the creation? Am I right? We changed things. So goodbye to language, goodbye to God. That's what it is. God bless you. When I was a kid, that was a long, long, long time ago. When I was a kid, my grandmother, she died, she said she was an atheist. And she used to say, God bless you. Because that was the semantic reality for her, was that there was a God. There was a creator. It made sense. And as a community, they all believed together. So, one last point. I was in that terrible thing. I was in London, yeah? 7/7. Do you remember 7/7? Reported all around the world, yeah? I was traveling from near Holland Park to Fulham, yeah? So, and I got towards Fulham, and then they said, you've got to divert, and then we got on a bus, and then they said no, and apparently there's some hideous act that's gone on, and so on and so forth. And anyway, I ended up having to walk to Whitechapel that day. I was working for Muslim Aid, and I was a fundraising manager there. So I walked all the way. I got into the office, and there was some people camped outside the masjid. Have I got much more time? I need to finish pretty soon, yeah? Yeah? It's okay. I don't want to overstep the mark, So I was outside the masjid, East London masjid. It's a Whitechapel masjid. It's a huge monstrosity I can't say that really, is it? It's a big place anyway. So there was a bunch of media guys outside, because they of course want to know what do Muslims think about this lunatic that's burned himself up, and killed people miserably. 55 people died that day. And then the guy, he came to me, and he said to me, what do you think about this issue? And I said, do you really need to ask me that question? Do you think that I'm a foolish idiot to say that there's any good in this? Do you think anyone is going to come out of this place? Is there anyone in their right mind will tell you? Obviously. He said, I'm an atheist. I don't really believe in God. He just came out with it. Now, what I'd read, I think it actually wasn't on the same day. It was the day after, or something like that, because I was working there. But what I'd read in a newspaper article was, as the explosion was going off in the carriages, every single person on the carriage in the carriage, from the eyewitnesses, was saying, "Oh God, help me." Do you see that? So I said to him, if you were on the carriage, who would you be calling to? I recounted the story. And he said, "Oh, that's another story." And he went. Do you see what I'm saying? It's in the fitrah. It's natural. It's natural for us to believe in a creator. And I ask Almighty God to unite our hearts upon that understanding so that we can have peace in this world, and truly and verily, as Allah mentions in the Quran, only with the remembrance of God do hearts find rest. Only with the remembrance of the ultimate Al-Wadud, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, the all-merciful, the continuously merciful, the most merciful, that we find peace. And many people today, and there is a direct link from the loss of faith. Many studies in the world today, a direct link from the loss of faith with depression. And by the way, there's a lot of young Muslims growing up in my country who are extremely depressed because they've lost the connection with God. You know, they've lost the connection with the ultimate, with the Almighty. Okay? So again, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy for all of us. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha ant astaghfirullah wa atubu alayk. Anything I've said which is, correct is from Allah. Anything I've said which is incorrect, of course, is from myself, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us for that. If there's any points or questions you want to raise, I'm sorry if I've labored it a bit. Probably I talked too much myself. Yeah. Please do present those to me now, and otherwise, great.
Hang on, sorry. Assalamu alaikum. I've got a question from someone who's too shy to ask.
Like me then.
So you mentioned that, as you said, we have music all around us, right? So how do you resist the temptation to listen to music? Because it's everywhere. I mean, in anything and everything, like the malls and everything, right? So you want to listen some more. So how do you stop yourself from doing that?
How do you resist the temptation to listen to? Okay, when I'm in conversations, I do very little talking when it comes to the conversation about Allah. Unless, if they're coming to me and asking questions, then I let them talk a lot. Because then it means they're already in that zone. Yeah? If you're trying to convince them to have a conversation, you just have to listen. You have to listen. Am I right? Yeah? If you don't listen, what's going to happen? You're going to lose them, right? You will not be able to retain their companionship. They will just walk because you're not listening. So ultimately, the best example of that is the Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Used to listen to people a lot. Used to have empathy with them. Okay? Resisting it is just, that's part of having sabr. You've got to have sabr. And the verses that everyone knows, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ, verily by time, man is in a state of loss by time, except those who have faith, and those who call each other to the truth and have patience upon that. So, when you're having those conversations, by nature you learn to have sabr. And sometimes it will end in what you think is a disaster because they've talked all the way out. And I found that the people that do that, they pour it out of their hearts, and then later on you see that they've come back. But if I had, and I've done it before, from experience, try to put too much information into their head and not really listen to them, they never come back. So by experience, by process of elimination of different methods, let them talk. They must talk. Anything else? Yeah, brother. Yeah. I like the color of the Quran.
Thank you. Alaikum, Sheikh. I'm from Manchester, originally.
Oh, mashallah.
So I used to sometimes say, we believe in democracy,
Yeah.
in England. But how many million people around the world that believe in God? Chinese, Hindus, Muslims. If you compare them, comparing with how many millions are atheists. So if I ask you, say, who is more correct? These 5 billion people who believe in some sort of God. So they're all incorrect. And you, couple of million, you're on the correct path, that there is no God. So basically what you're telling me is that all of these 4 billion people who believe there is some sort of God, they're a bunch of morons.
Mm-hmm. You're saying that they, well, okay, so let's put it another way. How many Muslims are there in the world today? How many?
Nearly 2 billion.
Why do you think the others don't know about the truth? Because people have left da'wah. And so Allah mentions the Prophet ﷺ mentions in one hadith from Hudaytha that you will either command the good and forbid the evil, or I will send to you a calamity. And when you raise your hands to correct that calamity, it will fall on deaf ears. Because we are the ones there are no prophets to come, right? There are no more books to come, there are no more prophets to come. Am I right? So, we are the inheritors of the last prophet. Yeah? The information that was given to us 1400 years ago needs to be related by us. So we are in trouble there. There are some verses, I haven't got them to hand, I need to grab them, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indicates, and Sheikh Bilal Phillips showed me these verses, that these people can be forgiven if they haven't had the opportunity to get the facts from the believers. And I believe there's a lot in the world today. In fact, there's a lot of believers that just haven't taken Shahada. It's not been explained to them. So I think what you do is, rather than doing this, you do this. You don't point there, or the Malaysian way is this, and that. This is much more polite, this way. This is not good. So you do this. You point 3 fingers back at you, because you are responsible for carrying that message ultimately. And that, if you remember, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was 1. And then he was 2, Khadija. Then he was 3, Abu Bakr. Then he was 4. Then he was 5. And then, with 80 years after the death of Rasulullah ﷺ, Islam had reached in 711 Spain and India. And then 200 years later, it's pretty much in every place in the world. Right? Am I right? Even in China. There's 20 million Muslims living in China now, isn't it? Some of them not in a very good state, unfortunately. Yeah? So we have enough Muslims in the world to call. We have the technology, we have the resources, we have everything. So we're to blame. On the Day of Judgment, there will be certain Jane and Paul and Peter, they will be there with us. The question is, did we convey the verses to them? And Allah is, ultimately, we are not judges. We cannot say that anyone is going to be in hell or paradise. This is a mistake. It's the wrong approach to the deen of Islam. We can say, according to the description of this in the Quran, you are in this camp or that camp, but you have no idea where they're going to be. You have no idea where you're going to be. But we can say that actually we are partly responsible for them not knowing the message. So now it's time for us to get back to the da'wah.
There's a question online here from Brother Muhammad Hashim. He said that Assalamualaikum, sir. It is clear that the purpose of a Muslim is to worship and please Allah. The question is, how does a human being realize his own purpose in this world?
To other people what?
Sorry, what?
Yeah, say it again, the last bit.
Oh, okay. It is clear that the purpose of a Muslim is to worship and please Allah. The question is, how does a human being realize his own purpose in this world?
Well, first of all, from the fitrah. What we've been discussing is the fitrah. The fitrah is that program inside them. And if their companions are good, they will be good. You'll be raised with your companions. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, you will be raised with your companions, so choose your companions wisely. Yeah? So the only way for that person who's a Muslim or not yet Muslim or a non-practicing Muslim to know is that the companions around them, and it goes back to the same issue. It's all about the da'wah. When we sit with people, do we sit to talk about football and then we leave it at the football? Talk about Liverpool, talk about nasi goreng, talk about the sun, talk about the weather, talk about clothes, talk about pop idols? Or do we collectively remind them, plant the seed? How are those people going to know? From their fitrah, and then you wake their fitrah up when you have a conversation, or you do a beautiful action. Like I mentioned, Mo Salah, the football player in Liverpool, just by him adoring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and conveying that through his actions, because da'wah doesn't have to be a conversation. Da'wah can be a beautiful action you do for the sake of trying to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then that action can give rise to millions of people awakening their fitrah within them. So that's it. It's really from the fitrah. It's from the operating system. Somebody has to push the button for it to begin. Something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is of course the owner of the hearts. All we can do is convey. I just met a guy, he's been a Muslim for 2 years, Scottish guy, and he said he came to Malaysia and his wife was saying, because he was starting to read the Quran, he started reading the hadiths, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his wife was saying, you're going to become a Muslim. She's not a Muslim. Yeah? And he said, no way, not in a month of Sundays, like we say, not in a month of Sundays. And, sure enough, he took Shahada. And he said, the moment he took Shahada, and I remember this myself, and some of you in the room might be reverts as well, is that there was something that happened inside him. That's the reconnection with the fitrah. It's something that happened, and he's never felt the same afterwards. It's amazing, in other words. Really, honestly, if you're born Muslim, sometimes you don't go through that process, sometimes you do. But if you look for the faith and eventually you find it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives you that inspiration and He owns the heart, He opens the heart, you regain the connection with your fitrah, and then the rest is history, so to speak. Okay, guys? Halas? Finito? Finished? Gone? Kaput? Okay. Thank you very much for listening, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.